Dear friends, members of Women's Federation for World Peace, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. We want to thank you for your presence tonight here with us. This is our second event of a cycle of webinars under the general theme, Rethinking the Society We Want, Keys to the Establishment of a Harmonious Society. As you can see behind me, there is a poster related to the topic we'll discuss tonight, together with our 4 expert panelists, Challenges to Prevent Violence and Reach a Peaceful Coexistence. I'm Maria Gabriella Mieli, Vice President of WFWP Italy, and I'll moderate our meeting tonight. This series of webinars was decided by the South Europe branch of Women's Federation for World Peace and the person of the 3 presidents, Elisabetta Nistri from Italy, Marta Carvalho from Portugal, and Marcia de Abreu from Spain. Thank you very much for your decision and dedication. We would like to thank you also, Giorgio Gasperoni from San Marino, who was the person in charge for the technical aspects, together with Robin Chionna from Italy, taking care of the informations in the chat area. And a very special gratitude goes to our translators. As you can see in the globe icon below, in case you don't understand English, you can choose your language, Italian, Spanish, or Portuguese, according to your mother tongue. You can follow us in streaming under our Facebook channel, WFWP Italia. Some notes now about our organization for those of you who are approaching us for the first time. Women's Federation for World Peace is an international organization inaugurated on April 10, 1992 in Seoul, South Korea, by Dr. Hak Cha-han Moon and her late husband, Dr. Sam-Myung Moon, and founded in more than 120 countries in the world, covering all the continents on the earth. In 1997, Women's Federation for World Peace became an international NGO at the United Nations in the ECOSOC with general consultative status and affiliated at the Department of Public Information. Our vision is women working together to realize one global family rooted in a culture of sustainable peace. Our mission is empowering women as peace builders and leaders in the family to transform the community, nation, and world through education, advocacy, partnership, reconciliation, and humanitarian service. WFWP aims to create an environment of peace and well-being for future generations and people of all races, cultures, and religious creeds. Let's now enter the topic of tonight. We will start to listen to our speakers. Then we will have a section of questions and answers. Please, if any of the participants at this event would like to submit a question to our panelists, please write it in the question and answer icon. The panelists will try to answer according to the time remaining. Please remember that the time for each one of you is 10 minutes. After 8 minutes, you'll hear a sound informing you that from that moment, you'll have still 2 minutes to conclude your speech. Now, we will start with Dr. Antonio Stango from Italy. Dr. Stango is a political scientist. He has been working for human rights since the early 80s and is currently the president of the Italian Federation for Human Rights, formerly the Italian Helsinki Committee, professor of international organizations and human rights at Rome Link Campus University, and president of the European Center for Penitentiary Studies. He has been leading several NGOs and international projects, monitoring conflict and crisis areas, consulting for the European Union Commission and Parliament and for the Italian Chamber of Deputies and Senate, and organizing dozens of international conferences. A publisher and editor-in-chief of magazines and specialized journals, he is a member of the Global Peace Council and of the Scientific Committee of FORE, Forum Religion Freiheit, and has been lecturing in universities and postgraduate courses in Italy, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, and Uzbekistan. He regularly attends the UN Human Rights Council in Geneva, the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe, the OSHA Human Dimension Implementation meetings, among the others. Dr. Stango, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much also for this presentation. So, as we are discussing the issue today on the occasion of the International Day of Violence Against Women, that was established by the UN General Assembly in 1999, I would like to recall some points of the existing, at least theoretical, international mechanism of protection of women against violence. We always have to think that there is the theory of international human rights protection, and then there is the praxis that unfortunately is not always the same. So we will have regard to the United Nations frame and then specifically to the European frame. As for the United Nations, first of all, we have to consider the 1948 Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which also according to the solemn proclamation of the UN International Conference on Human Rights that was convened in Tehran in 1968, states a common understanding of the peoples of the world concerning the inalienable and inviolable rights of the international community. So the human rights are universal, as the title itself of the declaration says, and should be valid for everybody, whatever. This means that whatever any authoritarian regime might say, pretending to have a so-called regional or relativistic approach to human rights, the rest established in the Universal Declaration and later specified in several conventions should be anyway binding for all in every part of our planet. This specifically concerns the situation of women, who are de facto and often even according to some national laws, still discriminated against in many countries. When a group of persons is discriminated, all individuals of that group are more vulnerable. Besides other kinds of discrimination, which are all forbidden by international law, the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discriminations Against Women, that was adopted in 1979 by the UN General Assembly, is a key instrument to address violence against women. This convention clearly states from its very title that discrimination does exist and that they have to be eliminated. So it is not a mere declaration of principle. There are discrimination. This convention says from the very title, discriminations must be eliminated. Evidently, not all the states that signed and ratified the convention are really acting to implement it. While one of the regimes that more openly and systematically discriminate women, the Islamic Republic of Iran, did not sign the convention. In a similar way, regimes such as the Iranian one do not comply, among us, with the Beijing Declaration and Platform of Action of 1995, and do not follow the recommendation of the ad hoc body named UN Women, that is the United Nations entity for gender equality and the empowerment of women. The fact that in several countries women are openly discriminated against have serious effects also in Europe, especially through the phenomenon of large-scale migrations. This implies an urgent need for the legal and judiciary systems of the host state to strengthen their capacity to ensure equal rights for each individual, independently from his or her native country or ethnic, religious, or familiar community. To mention just a few examples, female genital mutilations are not to be allowed in any country, and it would not be acceptable to tolerate them within any community. Submission of women is an open infringement of international standards, notwithstanding the so-called regional approaches implemented by some authoritarian regimes. The same applies to unequal family and inheritance rights, to child marriage, to forcing minors to beg, as well as to performing hate speech or violently impeding others' legitimate freedom of expression. Other issues to be carefully considered include forcing to use the integral veil in public space, informal Sharia-based arbitration in family and inheritance matters, refusal of women teachers for male pupils in schools, and the request of gender segregation in sport or educational facilities. So this is a range of typical discrimination against women that do exist still in several countries and somehow, unfortunately, risk to be imported or already have been imported in some local communities, even in Europe or in Northern America or elsewhere. Then there is the European theoretical frame of protection of women's rights. Measures at the European level that can serve to address violence against women include the EU Victims Directive of 2012 and the Council of Europe Convention on Preventing and Combating Violence Against Women and Domestic Violence, known as the Istanbul Convention. The EU Victims Directive was adopted in 2012, as I mentioned, establishes minimum standards on the rights, protection, and support of victims of crime in the European Union, and makes specifically reference to victims of gender-based violence, victims of sexual violence, and victims of violence in a close relationship, even in the family. The Istanbul Convention was adopted by the Council of Europe and is the first legally binding regional instrument in Europe that comprehensively addresses different forms of violence against women. Also psychological violence, stalking, physical violence, of course, sexual violence, and sexual harassment. The convention entered into force in 2014 and was signed also by the European Union itself as such in June 2017. Establishes a series of offenses characterized as violence against women, and the states that ratify the convention must criminalize several of the offenses that I mentioned. So this kind of crimes should be treated as such, with criminal sanctions or other kind of legal sanctions. It is not a matter of family interaction. It is a matter relevant for the states, for the law. According to a 2014 Fundamental Rights Agency of the European Union survey, 1 in 3 women in the European Union has experienced physical or sexual violence since the age of 15. The report of the agency highlights the impact of violence affects not only the women that are directly victims, but also families, friends, and the society as a whole. Measures to fight and prevent violence against women are therefore required at both the European Union level and the member states, national levels. I'm going to conclude. The survey on violence against women indicates that the majority of women who are victims of violence do not report their experiences to either the police or to any victim support organization. And so they don't enter in contact with the justice system and with other services. As a result, the political and practical responses to address violences against women are not always informed by comprehensive evidence. So this is one of the issues that we have to face. Future EU strategies on equality between women and men could include new or newly recognized forms of violence against women. I mentioned stalking. I should mention also medium and the new technologies. So what can happen through the web, through the social media, as we can imagine. And finally, for sure, as even the report of the Fundamental Rights Agency of the European Union states, not only the EU bodies and the member states, but also the civil society actors can usefully be involved in the development of action plans which should be enacted on the field of employment, education, health, information, and communication technology. So I hope to have given a picture of the UN and the European mechanism of protection and what are the lacks in the system that we should try to fulfill.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Stango, for this incredible overview of our international organizations and mechanisms, and really useful for each one of us who are not in this kind of field. Now we go to the next speaker tonight, Dr. Odete Costa from Portugal. She's married and mother of 3 sons, was brought up in Toronto, Canada. Her university degree is in history from the Faculty of Arts and Humanities of University of Porto. She's an ambassador for peace of Women's Federation for World Peace Portugal, founder and president of the organization Movimento Lírio Azul, and founder of the project Raios de Sol, MLA and FPCC-SIDA, national coordinator for the Fundação Portuguesa e Comunidade contra SIDA in the fight against poverty and social exclusion, also helping children and families with AIDS. Member of the consulting board of the APC, Associação Portuguesa de Criminologia, and ad coordinator for the project JR, Restorative Justicia, Familias and Menores, member of the CDS-PP Political Committee District of Porto, president and board member of Spokeswomen for many national and local organizations dedicated to cultural and social activities in the community. And through the years, she has received many important awards and honors, not only from Portugal, but also abroad, for her role as a volunteer and fundraiser in non-profit organizations and charities, and also for creating successful signature social projects in the fight against poverty and social exclusion, where women and children have always played a central part. Dr. Odete, the floor is yours.
Hi, good evening to all of those watching this webinar session, and a special word of praise to Elisabetta Nistri, President of WFWP Italy. And I also send a warm hello to the guest speakers for Italy and Spain, and Giorgio Gasparoni, the man behind the scenes, and the rest of the team. And also greet the lovely Dr. Gabriella Mieli, and in her name, all the translators. I would like to thank, and with all my heart, Dr. Marta de Carvalho, the president of WFWP Portugal, and a dear friend. And on her behalf, I would like to greet all the women around the world who are part of this international organization. I'm very proud to be a member. I'm going to have a different approach. Dr. Stango, I'm very glad I took a different approach, because Dr. Stango was brilliant, and everything that he said, I applaud. And my approach will be stopping violence. The first step must begin in my heart. I am the founder and president of an organization called Movimento Lírio Azul. It was founded in 2014 in Portugal, and it is a civic movement with hundreds of members who are women across the country and even abroad, for example, Angola, Cabo Verde, Brazil. Movimento Lírio Azul believes that there can be no sustainable development without empowering women. Gender equality and female empowerment are the core of our organization. And although this organization was founded by women and is led by women, we invite men to work with us side by side as equals. Together, we are stronger. I'm sure Dr. Stangl would feel very welcome working together with us. I hope that one day I can present this organization with greater detail, but for now, I will focus on our signature project, Raios de Sol. The Fundação Portuguesa, a Comunidade contra a SIDA, is the main partner in this social and non-profit project, where issues concerning AIDS, among others, are especially are central and are dealt with dealing children, families. Together, our two organizations fight against poverty and social exclusion on a daily basis. We work directly with the community and local organizations, and we work in very different areas such as health, children, youth, discrimination, and abuses of all kinds. I am speaking to you today from the Junta de Freguesia de Vila de Conde in the northern part of Portugal, where we have one of our delegations for the Projeto Raios de Sol. It is very important to be close to those who need our help the most. And the success of our work depends very much on trust. In the delegation of Vila do Conde, we have a special program with the Juvenile Detention Center, the Centro Educativo de Santa Clara, where we try to overcome barriers of all types. Our social teams, skilled professionals, try to get to the root of the problem, and very often we come to the same conclusion. They have low self-esteem. People with low self-esteem, no matter what age, often feel unloved, awkward, incompetent. They lose hope. Researchers have found that there is a relationship between low self-esteem and crime and delinquency. Many adults and juveniles with lower self-esteem were slightly more likely to have engaged in illegal behaviors, while those with greater self-esteem were less likely. On this note, and also as a Roman Catholic, I quote the words of Pope Francis: "Behind hatred and violence is an unloved heart." The Pope said that violence and hatred are often signs that a person is unhappy and feels unloved and unwanted. When a person does not feel loved, violence can arise. When people feel truly loved, they are able to love too. Today, society has a new approach to dealing with violence, and the key words are prevention and second chance. I am an advisor and member of the board for the APC, Associação Portuguesa de Criminologia. In English, it is the Portuguese Association of Criminology, and also head coordinator for a new social project dedicated to restorative justice, families, and minors. This important organization, APC, was founded in 2012 in Portugal and has some of the most famous names in the country in crime fighting and prevention, including university professors, field specialists, lawyers, police investigators, and journalists. And proudly, among our consulting members and partners is Movimento Lírio Azul and the project Raios de Sol. We must teach our children at a very early age that we have to respect each other's differences. Schools play a significant role in educating young people against violence and helping change the underlying attitudes that lead to it. Studies have shown, for example, that successful schooling leading to employment, and this is very important, has been identified as a major factor in resistance from crime and antisocial behavior. On these lines of prevention, we try to work with the families and explain the importance of, for example, talking to your children, setting clear rules and limits, knowing that warning signs are sometimes the first step to being able to stop what is happening in the children's life. Not being afraid to be a parent, know when to intervene, being involved in your children, in your child's school, with his friends, and so on. But we must also remember that those who have paid their price to society, especially young people, must not be discriminated and have to be given an opportunity to rebuild their lives. They must be given a second chance. If this does not happen, the chances of returning to crime and violence are very strong. Unfortunately, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, we had to cancel most of our conferences and activities, including Raios de Sol, that were programmed for the last months. One of the things that worry us the most, and all those who are involved in these projects and organizations and in the Junta de Freguesia de Vila do Conde, are the economical and social consequences of this pandemic. Not only do we have to stop much of the work that was being done in the community, but due to the crisis, we had to deal with new cases every day. Many of us ask, but how can I, a simple citizen, a common member of my community, make a difference in the world in the fight against violence? Well, sometimes all we need to remember is that they're the little things that make the biggest differences. Have you ever stopped to think about the importance of a smile, a small gesture of love in our homes, our schools, our workplaces, in our church? They are very often the first steps to building a better and more just world. Many international organizations, such as WFWP, understand the great importance of small symbolic gestures and have taken things just a bit further, like creating a signature project called the Bridge of Peace. During this ceremony, individuals of conflicting backgrounds are asked to come together in forgiveness for the past and to believe that a peaceful future is possible. This is so inspiring. Abuse and hatred of all kinds, racism and prejudice must end when we cross the bridge of peace. And it must be done with an open and full heart. I very often said we should be mandatory to have a bridge of peace in every city of the world. It's absolutely fantastic. I find this signature project absolutely inspiring. Also, the International Day of Peace, Peace Day, is observed around the world each year on the 21st of September. Established in 1981 by the unanimous United Nations resolution, Peace Day provides a globally shared date for all humanity to commit to peace and, above all, differences and contribute to building a culture of peace. And this is a very important event, and it begins always with a message of peace from the UN Secretary General. I would like to take a moment to remember the important role of the United Nations in peace building. And being Portuguese, I am very proud of the achievements of the UN Secretary General, António Guterres, for being a sound and active voice in promoting peace and justice around the world. In his honor, I would like to embrace all those who contribute to unity and understanding, may it be through political measures, through world organizations, or even small community projects. In conclusion, autumn is a special time of the year to speak about peace. Traditionally, during the months of fall in many countries around the world, we celebrate harvest and other blessings of the past year. It is a time to be with our families and good friends and celebrate what is truly important in our lives. The way we celebrate may be different in the countries according to tradition, customs such as the United States, Canada, Brazil, or Korea, but the essence remains the same. This important holiday has but one purpose: the celebration of peace, unity, and acceptance, as opposed to conflict, division, and discord. Dr. Hatja Hanmoon, named the Mother of Peace and co-founder of the Women's Federation for World Peace, during the second Rally of Hope that occurred just last October, mentioned the importance of the Thanksgiving holiday. In her inspiring speech, one of the phrases that I recall the most was when Dr. Moon said, "We should all open our hearts and ears to heaven." National holidays are based on values of love and sharing and have a special purpose in our lives. They are important reminders against a violent and intolerant society and enforce the importance of love and understanding. Important organizations such as the United Nations, the Women's Federation for World Peace, and many others such as Movimento Lírio Azul cannot be successful in building a more just and better world if the local community doesn't get involved. And I, as an individual, have to make an honest commitment to be part of this movement for world peace and to end all kinds of violence and discrimination. And the first step must begin in my heart. Thank you so very much, and please remember, keep safe.
Thank you, Dr. Odette, for your speech, and congratulations for your commitment in the areas of education, social, and political areas, and so close to us, not only in Women's Federation, but in all the other organizations founded by Dr. and Mrs. Hatja Hanmoon. Now, let's continue, and now we will introduce to you Dr. Soha Aboud Agar. She's born in Cairo, and she obtained a bachelor's degree in Arabic philology, followed by a PhD in Arabic and Islamic studies from the Complutense University in Madrid, where she is presently a full-time professor in its Department of Arab and Islamic Studies of the Faculty of Philology, teaching Andalusian history and culture and Islamic world history and literature. She also teaches Islamic studies in the master program of the Institute of the Science of Religion. She is the author of several books and also the author of many specialized studies. She has collaborated in the Encyclopedia of Arabic Language and Linguistics and was the director of the index at the journal Anakel de Estudios Arab. She is member in several interdisciplinary research teams and member in the Union Européenne des Arabisantes et Islamisantes and in the Association Internationale de Dialectologie Arabe, AIDA. She has given numerous lectures and participated in international conferences in Spain, the United States, Egypt, France, and Great Britain, and she is also author of many specialized studies. Dr. Abud, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I hope you're hearing me now. Yeah, okay. So, hi, how are you? Thank you very much for having me here in this very interesting roundtable, surrounded by so many big and great specialists in many, many fields. And I want to thank especially my friend Marcia Abreu from Madrid, who has always introduced me in this big field, which is peace, the peace in the world. And I want to congratulate Women's Federation for World Peace for what they are doing all over the world, not only in Europe. Well, I have to say that that challenges to prevent violence and reach a peaceful coexistence is such an exciting and challenging topic, as it is quite broad. One could approach it from many different angles, be it development, so social, economic, human rights, security, politics, and the list goes on. I have therefore chosen to focus. I have therefore chosen to focus on two different and complementary sides of challenges, leaving how to prevent violence and reach a peaceful coexistence for my colleagues at this round table who know much better than I do on this subject. So I'll try to find an answer to two questions. Why are we having this dialogue today? And what are today's challenges in preventing violence and peace building? Obviously, war and conflict are not new to us. So why is this such an urgent topic of discussion? It is because while the number of interstate wars has decreased since mid 20th century, violent conflicts are on the rise. And two, the nature of violent conflicts has shifted drastically, meaning that traditional ways of resolving them are no longer very effective. So what we see is that conflicts today increasingly involve non-state actors like militias, criminal groups, international terrorist groups, etc. Civilian deaths can be much greater than before due to the style of warfare as well as the new technologies used in conflicts. Population displacements are larger in scale as well as longer in duration. Currently, we have over 65 million displaced in the world. Conflicts are more fragmented. Number of armed groups involved is much higher, thus making it more complex. There is also more regionalization of conflicts where issues, be they economic, social, political, military, are interlinked beyond national borders. This makes conflicts far more protracted and more difficult to resolve through traditional means. Main drivers for conflict and violence to be considered are unresolved regional tensions, breakdown of rule of law, high socioeconomic inequality within countries, scarcity of resources, now also combined with climate change and the like. The idea here is that because the incidence of violence or conflict is increasing, and because it is taking on a very difficult and different and more complex nature than in the past, we need to be rethinking, one, how we prevent it before the fact, how we engage with conflicts while they are happening, and three, how we resolve conflicts with reconciliation and reconstruction after the fact. We find that traditional means for the above are no longer very effective, And in fact, the traditional means were very focused on resolving conflicts and rebuilding after they took place. Better understanding of prevention is needed now. So, what are today's challenges in preventing violence or conflict and reaching peace building? Apart of what was said, there are other challenges I'll mention in very few words. One, the conflict trap. The idea that once a country goes through an intrastate conflict, such as civil war, it is far more likely to experience another conflict and more violence shortly after. Basically, the systems, institutions, social and economic structures and incentives and the like are altered so that violence and conflict are more easily perpetuated. And as such, after a nation has gone through violence and conflict, they find themselves in a trap that is harder to take them out of. B. The scarcity of inclusive conflict prevention and peace building. It is evident that one of the major reasons for the failure of conflict prevention and peace building processes are that they are not done in an inclusive way. We find a lot of literature, for instance, on the importance of engaging women in peace building, like what the federation that is hosting these webinars has always tried to do. But it also goes beyond that, because basically, if you do not have all elements of a society at the table during peace building and reconciliation, you cannot realistically come to a sustainable solution. Socioeconomic inequality. While poverty is not necessarily an indicator for increased risk of conflict, stark socioeconomic inequalities make it more likely that the conflict lasts longer and that it repeats again in the future. This is because of many reasons. The poor, young, unemployed men, are often exploited as fighters. Elites will make decisions without thinking of the lower ranks, and they can often end up benefiting from the military industrial complex that arises in such conflicts. These inequalities usually worsen in conflict, thus entrenching countries further in a trap. The poor end up becoming poorer and the rich become richer. The bottom line is that in countries that are in cycles of violence and conflict, you cannot really ensure peace building without addressing the inequality issue. And lastly, flawed or non-existent reconciliation processes. We cannot ensure successful peace building in a country or region without a true reconciliation process, one that is inclusive, that brings out the truth of what took place, and that allows people from different sides to make amends. Unfortunately, this rarely happens, or when it does, it is taking place through the intervention of international agencies like the UN, for example, or NGOs on the ground, focusing on peace building and social cohesion. It cannot be successful without the national leadership really believing in promoting this process and leading it by example. It also does not work if certain groups active in and or victims of the conflict are not included. An example could be the successful case of Rwanda. It is incredible to think about how after so much violence and killing between two groups, the country is now quite prosperous and the two groups are living together relatively in peace. Neighbors whose ancestors killed one another are now living side by side. This is in part because of a nationally run truth and reconciliation process which required disarmament and sacrifice from all sides. This was just a glimpse on the challenges that should be tackled. There is obviously a lot more, but showing here a few aspects might help us discovering on the long run how to prevent violence and reach a peaceful coexistence. And thank you very much for your attention, and thank you very much for having me be among you, among this big circle of specialists. And thank you for the attendees.
Thank you, Dr. Soha. You have given us an overview of the situation in different areas, and also you gave us some example on how to try to find solution and to invest ourselves and committing ourselves in order to help people in need and in different areas of the world, including the areas where we live. Now is the time to pass to the last speaker, Elisabetta Nistri from Italy. She was born in Florence, Italy, where she graduated as school teacher. Since 1980, she started working with several organizations for peace. Married in 1989, and she has 4 children. She made a lot of voluntary work, especially in South Korea, for the reunification of the country, and she cooperated with the Korean newspaper Segeilbo since the beginning, from 1989 to 1992. From 1993 to 1999, she became co-president with her husband, Giuseppe Calì, of the Family Federation for World Peace and Unification in Italy, and again from 2002 until now. From 1997 to 2000, she became president of Women's Federation for World Peace Italy, and from 2012 until now. Since 2019, she's also coordinator for WFWP South Europe. She organizes and actively participates in events and conferences on the themes of women, dignity and human rights, balanced leadership, family as a school of love, peace starts with me, prevention of violence against women, interreligious dialogue and intercultural exchange, deviance prevention. She has participated in international conferences in Portugal, Great Britain, Czech Republic, Belgium, at the European Parliament, in Korea, and in Albania. In Italy, she has organized events in cooperation with local, national, and international institutions. Elisabetta Nistri, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, really, everybody, for coming here. The people who are following us, even on our Facebook page, on streaming, and especially to the speaker before me, that without organizing ourselves, we were able to touch this big issue, violence, in so many different points, and giving really important advice and precious advice. Yeah, unfortunately, we still find ourselves having to fight, even in our society, which we define as being advanced, this problem of violence. This should make us reflect and ask ourselves a question: how is it possible that, despite the progress in technology that have brought so much benefit to our society, Nothing is able to extirpate this root of violence that manifests itself in so many ways. Perhaps we should consider this problem seriously and include other fundamental aspects concerning people's well-being, the human relationships. The month of November is usually dedicated to activity to promote the International Day of Violence Against Women. As President of Women Federation for World Peace in Italy, I have organized conferences and participated in various initiatives on this theme. My speech usually stands out because I generally face this topic from a different point of view, but a different point of view also gave to us Odette in her speech. There are many initiatives taken to help women to report and denounce phenomena of mistreatment and violence, because whoever finds themselves in this situation needs help, even in being able to analyze the facts objectively. The anti-violence center and the family homes are essential to protect and take care of women who have experienced violence. This type of action is very important, but absolutely insufficient, because it's always directed in repairing a tort that has already been done. If we want to stop the dramatic phenomena, we must be able to analyze it deeply and understand the cause in order to resolve the problem from its root. The fact that the highest percentage of crime committed against women happens in the family home from those who say they love them is extremely significant. Likewise, the fact that feminicides are often followed by suicide of those who committed them should make us reflect. When a father kills the mother of his children, we should ask what pushed him to take this action in that moment. Surely not the love for his children or for his wife, who he said he loved and would never leave. It was motivated by dissatisfaction, by a lack of love, a love that he felt he deserved and expected to receive from his wife or partner. He eliminates the presumed cause of his suffering, but then often takes his own life because the problem of lack of love was not resolved, and because in that gesture there is still no joy, satisfaction, or gratification. So violence on women is a manifestation of a lack of true love or of a wrong idea of what love is. Therefore, it is important to prevent this by educating and guiding our youth from a young age to understand how to build healthy and constructive relationships. Violence manifests itself in progression, so it is everyone's duty to educate our young people to recognize those sentinel behaviors so that action can be taken before irreparable consequences occur. In this way, we can eradicate a culture of violence and promote education towards affectivity. The key is to be able to understand that every relationship assumes an exchange which can enrich and give me joy not only from the experience of receiving love, attention, understanding, but also from that of giving love and making others happy. It is therefore of fundamental importance that each one of us undertake to invest and rejoice for the good of others, so that we can learn to love and make the people around us happy. So we can enjoy the joy of others. This makes double happiness, double joy. The golden rules, they say, do not do to others what you would not want to do to you, or said in a positive context, do for others what you would like others do for you, is difficult to practice if we do not develop through empathy the capacity to understand and feel the need of others, which can many times be different from our own. In a couple relationship, it is extremely important to be able to listen to oneself and to one's partner. The relationship between the two will be healthy and constructive if the two partners do not try to dominate each other, but try to understand and support each other instead, and accept their diversity as a reciprocal opportunity for enrichment. Adolescence is a very important period in the development of the personality, and the most precious thing that can be developed in this period is the capacity to create deep friendship with their peers. This experience will be very precious for them and will help them to build a harmonious relationship as a couple in the future. I once made a speech in a high school assembly of 500 students. I was invited, I had the chance, on the topic violence on women, and I expressed those points to them. There were other speakers coming from the police department, from anti-violence centers, lawyers, magistrates, and therapists. A very interesting debate followed, and some students asked a very direct question. The question that attracted great attention was from a boy who said, "If I understood well, the action that you take to fight this is to oblige the aggressor to keep a certain distance from the victim who denounced this abuse. But a person of this type, that you cannot consider a true man because of his behavior, do you think he would care about a prohibition imposed by the police?" In fact, the news continued to report these criminal acts. I think that the only effective prevention is what Ms. Elisabetta said, referring to me, about learning to love, really loving ourselves as we can learn to love others. This is the only real prevention that we should invest in, because everything starts when we are young. It is at this age that we should learn to love and respect others in the real way. It is for this that school and institution should support this type of initiative, and we should all invest ourselves, because when we become adults, it will be more difficult to correct this type of behavior. I was so surprised myself listening to this young man. And to our great surprise, all the students, teachers, and members of the police force stood up and applauded what the boy said and expressed their appreciation. This gave me a lot of hope and trust in the young people that, despite the confusion of value in these times, they are able to recognize what is really important. With the intention of supporting the realization of SDG 2030 of UN, with special reference to number 3, health and well-being, and the number 5, gender equality, we organized a seminar together with the psychotherapist, Dr. Gibi, on the theme, The Beauty of Feminine World, which ended the 30th of October and was divided in three conferences. They were dedicated especially to women, but also to those men who wanted to understand the secret of the woman's world. This seminar attracted a lot of interest and provided listeners with tools to recognize their own world and also identify the symptoms of a sign of unhealthy relationship. Some examples are a love that destroys, controls, and excludes a relationship with the external world is not an expression of love, but becomes a predator of energy. There are some situations in which women, especially younger women today, want to be desired even more than to be loved. Ready to do anything for this. So the search of external beauty became a priority overall. For example, what is the latest fashion, what the people like I do, how can they become someone who are desired. They do not research for a partner who would really love them for what they really are. And this is why it is important to acquire awareness of one's own value and dignity. But instead, they fall into dangerous vortex of trying to fulfill every request asked by their partner. Their creativity, vitality, relationship are put aside, and consent is sought for each action, almost helping the other to sabotage their self-esteem and autonomy for fear of being rejected. Here then, to conclude how important it is to form one character and a balanced personality from adolescence for both boys and girls. Recently, Women Federation Europe and Middle East has developed a new project especially for women and girls, and is mainly based on the dignity of women. It has attracted great interest in India and has been presented in many schools through a young female Indian school professor who learned about our organization during period of internship in our UN office in Geneva. The solution for violence on women, for violence in general, is precisely to focus on human relationships, to be able to reverse the human tendency to overpower others, to exploit others, and even to exploit all the resources of our planet Earth without thinking about tomorrow and future generations. This attitude, in the end, as we are already realizing at our expenses, is becoming self-destructive. So I hope that from this difficult period that we are going through due to COVID-19, which like a tsunami has upset our own lives, we can all draw some wise lessons and work together to change direction definitely. I would like to conclude with a phrase from the founder, Reverend Samuel Moon, from his book Philosophy of Peace. Humanity has desired peace since the beginning of history, but wars have continued without ending. The foundation for peace starts first uniting mind and body in ourselves, and then develops where husband and wife, parents and children, and the whole extended family become eternally one in love relationship. This is taken from Philosophy of Peace, and this is a special year because it's the centenary of the founder, Reverend Moon, and if you like, will be the chance you will see in the chat how to go to the website and go through all the different achievements he made for peace. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Elizabeth, for your incredible speech. Such internal and psychological aspects you underlined of human beings and the relationships among human beings. So important in order to understand how to face all the situation, especially regarding to violence, and how to educate our children and adolescents for a better future. So now time is going on. We don't have so much time, but we can have the possibility to some question and answer, one for each speaker. So the first question goes to Dr. Stango. What can be, in your opinion, the role of civil society organizations in the contrast to violence against women?
Okay. Civil society organizations can actually play a very important role in different ways. For instance, they can receive witnesses of cases of violence in the context where they operate. As we said, sometimes victims do not denounce the acts to the police or to other public administration. So they can do this more easily with non-governmental organizations, with associations that care about them. Then the civil society organization can provide these significant data that they collect to the institutions. So they can give input that institutions can analyze and act consequently. Maybe even more important, And some of our colleagues said in some speech today, the civil society organization can work on education, because education is still one of the most important tools that we have to improve the situation in the society, not only about violence against women, but in general against violence. So to increase respect for the other, women or anyway for the other person, and then to empower the women at every level of the society.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Stango. So the second question goes to Dr. Odette Costa. Considering the line of prevention mentioned in the 5 points of your speech, which you seek to be worked in the families in need, did you think about the fact that some parents or even families themselves may have certain character weaknesses which enable them to fulfill those points? If so, what measures can you propose or suggest for these kind of situations? Dr. Odette?
Thank you very much. It's a very important question, and the answer is not at all easy. We have to work the situation, including the families always, the families, the schools, and when we are working on a daily basis, very often we can find small hints, and we find that that child is he has an issue that starts with the family, and we can see that most of the people, regardless of age and regardless of its cause, we note that violence has a negative impact on those who experience and witness it. And we must keep in mind that violence can cause not only psychological harm, but not only physical harm, but psychological harm. And when we have an aggressive family with alcohol abuse, we find that the children very often when they come to school, they have issues with insecurity, anxiety, poor anger management, poor social skills. They are pathological liars quite often, and manipulative behavior, lack of empathy. And what we try to do is we try to work with the family. And in the Junta de Freguesia de Vila de Conde, because they have such strong relations with these families, they can also say that very often there is poverty at home, alcohol, abuse, and when we work these families, we have to have in strong consideration that we have to get to the core of the issue. And it's not really that simple, because sometimes we will get in contact with the parents and they won't show up. We have to go to the schools and we have to see why this child is so distant. And quite often what we try to do is we organize conferences, and we don't go to a direct family or a direct child, and we just try to bring the issue to the community and work on a general basis and see if we can have something special called trust. If we don't build a relationship based on trust, the families will just not come and they will not be helped. It's very difficult. It's very difficult for us. And quite often what happens is that the programs that we have, and there are many programs that are aimed to prevent violence in school-based, and Raios de Sol is an example. We use it as a form of prevention for children and young people. And these programs really only work their best when they involve teachers and parents. But I have to be quite honest, even when we do our best, it's not enough. And we rely, and this is very important, now I'm just finishing, we rely strongly on volunteers, because very often a volunteer is a person that we will get from society that belongs, is a team player. He will be in the school, he will be a coach, he will play basketball with the child, and sometimes we cannot, as skilled professionals or as volunteers, as an adult, reach to that child, but through volunteer work and through someone who is closer.
Thank you, Dr. Costa. So now the next question goes to Dr. Soha. You have already shared about why you don't think reconciliation is happening. Could you expand a bit more on what a true reconciliation process would entail? Dr. Soha?
Yeah, the true reconciliation would entail, well, many of the points that we have said now. Everybody, education, respect to the other, and the reconciliation should be on the basis of understanding the other. So everybody can have his share of justice and fairness and feel himself fairly treated. So not to follow with the conflict and find reconciliation in his place, in his home, in his country. And let me say that we have, without knowing it, we are talking about not the same. I talked about another scale of the problem, but if you come to the bottom, we have to begin by the individual in every country to be able to say that we are able to find compromise, reconciliation, and I'm not going to say happiness because this is a very utopic word, but to find at least peace wherever everybody lives, to find a place where not where people are not obliged to fly, are not obliged to leave because they are badly treated or because they are afraid. Let us see that reconciliation begins from the nuclear, which is the family, which is the person. And then from there, build a system that is respectful for everybody. This is what the reconciliation I mean to say.
Thank you, Dr. Soha. So, and the last question is for Elisabetta Nistri. In your presentation, you refer to very high moral values that we should apply to society. Can you give us some examples of practical activities done by the Federation to reach these goals?
Yeah. Thank you again because listening to the answer from the speakers, I felt we are talking really the same language. And yeah, there is really much power what we can do together. Yeah, but activity we are doing. One especially for reconciliation is the Bridge of Peace. The last we did was in Padova, in Italy, to commemorate the anniversary of the First World War, the end of the First World War, and that involve women coming from Italy, of course, Austria, Slovenia, Czech Republic, Switzerland, France, and Germany. And the title was Let Us Build a Bridge of Peace, Heal the Past, Prepare a New Way for Future Development. The main session was held in the City Hall, and the assessor for peace, counselor for peace, welcomed us. The ceremony consists of bonding and building friendship among the participants to break down the wall of prejudice and resentment and discover the common experience that usually unite us as women, until we come to the point that we cross the symbolic bridge and meet together one-to-one in a twinning ceremony. I invite all of you next time to join in this kind of ceremony, very touching. Our organization is present in several European countries, and through the relationship we created, we really know each other, come very close to each other, and we feel really like a big family. And so it happened when I listen to the news now on TV, I worry thinking to the friends that are living in such a country where conflicts still are going on. Recently, we follow very closely the situation of Armenia and Azerbaijan. And actually, I remember also a conference I attended several years ago by Dr. Stango to this topic, that he put very much light on the situation there, that is really not easy at all. But the point is that the family are suffering for that. We had a video call with our president in Armenia, who explained to us about the devastation experienced by both sides and how no one of the mother of both sides wanted this war, as they were forced to send their sons, even at the age of 16 years old, to the front to fight. No one of these young students wanted to go, wanted to be in the war, but they had to follow the order from the government. Both sides have suffered difficult consequences in this conflict. We listened with great pleasure of the armistice and hope that it can come to a definite solution for everyone. Another experience with the summer, we were very worried after receiving direct information from our friends in Beirut immediately after the explosion. We took action as soon as possible by organizing a fundraising effort as Women Federation Europe and Middle East. And we collected money, we sent there, and they were able to offer some basket of food and all the necessary need for these people in such great difficulties. So Women Federation Italy is also supporting this fundraising. You can find, in case you want to help, information on our page. But when we speak about violence, cannot talk only about physical violence. We must understand that violence is also verbal. And especially in this time that we are using so much communication through media because of COVID. Students and children even before, but now we are forced to use much more this kind of media for communication. It is very much important to control the way, the language we use. So Women Federation has sponsored, has participated in the preparation of manifest and document. The name is Manifesto of Non-Hostile and Inclusive Communication, was promoted by supported by famous actors, sportsmen, and especially from a teacher from school that they using in their school this manifest. Just a few points, 3 points of this main point for that is a manifest. Virtual is real. I communicate on the net, on the web, as I do in the real world, respecting people and their differences, their fragility and their strengths. I chose to include without judgment or discrimination. It's very important if everybody would follow this simple rule, thinking before putting something on the web, because once it's there, you don't know how big damage you can make to people. Insults are not a topic. The insult is a violent and primitive form of expression. It is doubly deplorable if we direct this to whoever is discriminated and lives in poverty, discomfort, fear, stigma, and marginalization. Sharing is our responsibility. Before sharing text, videos, or photos, I ask myself if I am adding equality to the discussion or if they promote respect. If I verify if the source is honest, neutral, or true. And so these simple rules, there are much more, but I think it's very important also to pay attention to this, because it's not only now more we relate with each other through the web, sometimes not really in person, so we can use in a good proper way, and we can give a contribution to the society, or in a bad way and make a lot of problems. Thank you.
Thank you to all of our wonderful panelists. So you gave your experience and expertise in your field, and so we could hear your answer from different perspectives, and so it can help us on how to continue in order to try to solve the problems related to the violence. This was our second session, and so a big round of applause from all of our audience to you. We have a lot to reflect and put in practice so that we can live in a better world. Together we can do it. Now some final announcements. Our time is ending, so but before finishing, we would like to ask the panelists to greet our audience. We want to have a picture together, but there are some few announcements. Our third and final session will be on next 3rd of December, same time, under the title Gender Balance, Man and Woman Working Together, under the overview of Portugal. We hope you will join us again. And on next Sunday, November 22nd, you can see in the chat, in the afternoon, we will participate in the 3rd Rally of Hope, an incredible program planned by Mother Moon in order to solve the problems of our societies and figure out a beautiful future world. Humankind need hope. On Sunday, November 29, we as South European chapter of Women's Federation, together with other organizations founded by Dr. and Mrs. Moon, will celebrate the centenary of the late Dr. Samia Moon. You can see the details in the chat area. If you are interested in reading the biography of Mother Moon just published, you can order it in Amazon. And you are all invited to our next activities. For more info, please contact your Women's Federation chapter. Thank you to all of the participants at this second Women's Federation South Europe event. Please take care and have a wonderful evening and weekend with your families. Now it's just the time for our picture. I remind you that we registered this event, so you can hear again in through the web pages in your countries or in Facebook. So time for the picture. Thank you very much, and we will send you other questions we received so that you can eventually answer to our floor. Thank you very much, and so have a nice evening.